The Zephyrian High Council erupted in malicious laughter as Princess Lyrelay stood before them, her crystalline features betraying no emotion despite the humiliation. Her opalescent skin, once a source of pride among her people, now seemed to dim under the harsh lights of the council chamber. The human colony on Kepler 442b requires a diplomatic envoy, Chancellor Vextar announced with barely concealed amusement. Who better than our beloved princess to represent the Zephyrian Empire? The snickers that followed cut deeper than any blade. For 3 centuries, Lyrelay had endured the whispers, the pitying glances, the careful avoidance of the topic that defined her existence among her people. In a species where fertility was not just biological imperative but spiritual calling, her barren womb marked her as fundamentally broken. The humans are a primitive species, Vextar continued, his yellow eyes gleaming. Perhaps their simple minds won't notice what our finest physicians have confirmed. Besides, what harm could come from sending the defective princess to the edge of civilized space? Lyrelay accepted the assignment with the same stoic grace she'd maintained for decades. Within a solar cycle, she found herself aboard a diplomatic vessel, bound for a world she'd never heard of, to meet a species the Zephyrians considered barely above animals. The human colony of New Harmony was nothing like she'd expected. Where she anticipated primitive settlements, she found thriving cities that seemed to grow organically from the landscape. The humans themselves defied every briefing she'd received. They weren't the crude, violent savages described in Zephyrian reports. They were curious, innovative, and possessed an inexplicable warmth that seemed to radiate from their very beings. Dr. Marcus Chen, the colony's chief administrator and xenobiologist, greeted her at the spaceport. Unlike the Zephyrian males who'd learned to avoid her gaze, Marcus looked directly into her eyes with genuine interest and respect. His brown eyes held no pity, no calculation, only welcome. Princess Lyrelay, he said, his pronunciation of her name somehow making it sound musical. We're honored by your presence. I hope our humble colony can provide adequate accommodations for someone of your stature. Over the following weeks, Lyrelay found herself drawn into the daily life of New Harmony. The humans didn't treat her as a curiosity or a burden, but as a person with valuable insights and experiences. Marcus in particular seemed genuinely interested in her thoughts on everything from stellar cartography to Zephyrian philosophy. During one of their evening walks through the colony's botanical gardens, Marcus noticed her lingering sadness as she watched human children play among the flowering trees. You seem melancholy, he observed gently. Is something troubling you? For the first time in her long life, Lyrelay found herself wanting to share her deepest shame. Among my people, a female who cannot bear children is considered incomplete. I have failed in the most fundamental way possible. Marcus stopped walking and turned to face her fully. Failed? Princess, you're one of the most accomplished diplomats I've ever met. You speak 17 languages, you've negotiated 3 interspecies trade agreements, and you've shown more wisdom in a month than most beings show in a lifetime. How could any of that be considered failure? Because I cannot create life, she whispered. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, then asked, Would you like to see something remarkable? He led her to his laboratory, where dozens of experiments were in progress. But he stopped before a simple terrarium containing what appeared to be barren soil. 6 months ago, this soil was completely sterile, poisoned by industrial runoff from the old mining operations. According to every test we ran, nothing should ever grow here again. He activated a holographic display showing microscopic imagery. But humans have learned something interesting about life. Sometimes, when conditions seem impossible, life finds a way to adapt, to overcome, to begin again. He touched a control, and the hologram shifted to show recent scans of the same soil. It was teeming with microscopic organisms, tiny pioneers reclaiming the wasteland. We introduced specialized bacteria, fungi, even mineral supplements. We changed the environment, supported what was already there, and gave it the tools it needed to flourish. Marcus looked at her meaningfully. Sometimes what appears to be infertility is just an environment that hasn't been optimized for life yet. Lyrelay felt something stir within her, not just hope, but a scientific curiosity she hadn't felt in decades. You think, my condition might not be permanent? I think human medicine has had to become very creative. We're a young species and we've faced extinction more than once. We've learned to see possibility where others see impossibility. The treatments that followed were unlike anything in Zephyrian medicine. Where her people had focused on correcting what they saw as genetic defects, Marcus and his team worked to optimize her body's existing systems. They introduced hormonal supplements derived from Earth flora, adjusted her nutrition to include trace minerals her homeworld lacked, and used gentle bioresonance therapy to encourage cellular repair. More importantly, they treated her not as a patient to be fixed, but as a partner in exploration. Lyreley found herself working alongside Marcus, contributing her knowledge of Zephyrian biology to their research, feeling useful and valued for the first time in centuries. The changes began subtly. Her skin regained its natural luminescence, her energy levels increased, and then, during a routine medical scan 6 months into the treatment, Dr. Sarah Kim, the colony's chief medical officer, made an announcement that changed everything. "Congratulations, Princess. You're pregnant." The journey back to Zephyr Prime felt different than her departure. Where once she had traveled in solitary shame, now she carried within her not just new life, but proof of something her people had never imagined, that their understanding of biology, of possibility itself, was far more limited than they'd believed. The High Council's reaction was exactly what she'd expected: stunned silence followed by furious accusations of fraud. "Impossible," Chancellor Vextar sputtered. "Our greatest physicians declared you permanently sterile. You cannot simply return from a primitive world carrying a child." Lyreley smiled, her hand resting protectively over her growing belly. "Perhaps, Chancellor, the primitives know something about life that we've forgotten." The medical examinations that followed confirmed what they all refused to believe. Not only was she carrying a healthy child, but the human treatments had fundamentally altered her biology, correcting deficiencies that Zephyrian science had declared uncorrectable. Within a year, the first exchange programs were established. Zephyrian medical students traveled to New Harmony to study human reproductive medicine, while human researchers gained access to advanced Zephyrian biotechnology. What had begun as a cruel joke had become the foundation of an unprecedented scientific partnership. Princess Lyreley, once the Empire's greatest shame, became its most celebrated diplomat. But more than that, she became something her people thought impossible: a bridge between worlds, proof that life finds a way, and that sometimes the greatest discoveries come from those willing to see possibility where others see only failure. Her daughter, born with both Zephyrian resilience and human adaptability, would grow up in a galaxy where the impossible had become inevitable, where two species had learned that together, they could overcome any barrier, even the ones they'd built for themselves.